The Scepter of Lucifer, the Path of Hell, Anubis. I was just an ordinary man until I read that name. Chapter 1, The Cursed Book. I always believed my life was ordinary, just another young man balancing work and studies, with nothing out of the ordinary. That was until that night. I was in my grandfather's old library, surrounded by towering shelves coated in dust. It smelled of aged paper and forgotten secrets. As I absent-mindedly ran my fingers along the books, one fell at my feet with an eerie thud. It was black, its cover rough and cold to the touch, as if it were alive. The title was etched in strange, ancient letters, yet I understood them perfectly. The Scepter of Lucifer, the Path of Hell, Anubis. A chill crept up my spine. The room suddenly felt unnaturally silent, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I hesitated, but my hand moved on its own, touching the cover. Then darkness. Chapter 2, Between Dream and Curse. I awoke in a different place. No longer in a library, but in an endless desert beneath a sky blackened with swirling storm clouds. The air was icy, unnatural. As I struggled to stand, a figure emerged before me, a towering being in ancient Egyptian robes, but with the head of a jackal. His golden eyes burned like embers. "You have finally returned." The voice did not come from his mouth, but echoed directly into my skull, deep and reverberating like a death sentence. I staggered backward, my body trembling, but my feet refused to move. It was as if I was bound to the very ground beneath me. I tried to scream, but my voice betrayed me. It is time to reclaim the scepter, King of Hell. Then I saw something horrifying, my own reflection in his eyes. It wasn't me. It was a pharaoh, a long-forgotten ruler clad in gold and obsidian armor, gripping a scepter wreathed in emerald fire. I was living two lives. I was here. I was there. I was myself, but I was also the king of darkness. Chapter 3, War Against Fate. A sudden force pulled me backward, and in the blink of an eye, I was back in the library. My breath came in ragged gasps, my hands shaking. The book lay open before me. The first page had changed. It now bore my name. Was it just a dream? Or had I truly returned from the past? What was this scepter? And why did they call me the King of Hell? The battle between past and present has begun. Between man and curse. Between life and damnation. Will he find the scepter? Or will his soul be lost forever? If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and follow to uncover the next chapter. Chapter 4, The Mark of the Pharaoh. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the book. My name, etched in ink as black as the void, shone against the aged parchment. My breathing grew shallow as my fingers traced the letters. Suddenly, pain seared to my palm, like fire crawling beneath my skin. I yanked my hand away, but it was too late. The black ink moved. No, it slithered, like a living thing, crawling up my arm and twisting ancient symbols. A deep, whispering voice echoed from nowhere and everywhere at once. The scepter calls to the master, and hell demands its king. I stumbled backward, but the room shifted. The bookshelves melted into shadows, and the walls stretched into endless stone corridors. Torches flickered to life on their own, casting eerie golden light over hieroglyphs carved into the walls. I was no longer in my grandfather's library. I was inside the book. Chapter 5, The Temple of the Forgotten. The air smelled of sand and blood. I could hear faint whispers, voices of the dead, murmuring in a forgotten tongue. My heart pounded as I took hesitant steps forward, the cold stone beneath my bare feet, feeling too real to be a dream. Ahead of me stood a colossal door. It was made of obsidian and gold, a door with carvings of a jackal-headed figure, Anubis. His eyes seemed to follow me, glowing with unnatural, hungry light. As I approached, the symbols on my arm pulsed, and the door creaked open. A gust of freezing wind howled through the temple, carrying with it the scent of decay. Inside, a throne stood at the center of the chamber. Not empty, no. A figure sat upon it. A figure that looked exactly like me. His golden mask gleamed under the dim torchlight. He wore the robes of Pharaoh, and in his hand, he gripped a scepter wreathed in green fire. He smiled. "You are late. Chapter 6. The War of Two Selves. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. The other me stood up from the throne, his golden eyes locked onto mine. He raised a scepter, and suddenly, the ground shattered. Swarms of shadowy figures rose in cracks. Soldiers clad in ancient armor, their faces hollow, their eyes burning like dying embers. They were waiting for me. The other me stepped closer, his voice smooth, almost amused. "You don't remember, do you?" I clenched my fists, my body shaking. "Who are you?" I forced the words out. He laughed, a deep, hollow sound. "I am you, and you are me. You were never meant to be reborn. You were meant to return." He raised a scepter, my scepter, and the shadows lunged at me. The war for my soul had begun, to be continued. Who was the real Pharaoh? What is the power of the scepter of Lucifer? And can he escape the fate that binds him to the past? Follow, and stay tuned for the next chapter. Chapter 7. The Scepter's Curse. I barely had time to react. The shadows rushed at me, their skeletal hands clawing for my throat. Cold, suffocating darkness wrapped around my body, dragging me toward the abyss beneath my feet. No, instinct took over. My right hand burned with an unbearable heat as the symbols on my arm flared to life. A pulse of energy erupted from my skin, sending the shadow soldiers tumbling backward. My other self, the false pharaoh, tilted his head, his golden mask catching the dim light. He didn't look surprised. "It's waking up, isn't it?" he murmured. I staggered to my feet, my breathing ragged. "What are you?" The false pharaoh stepped forward, lowering his scepter. The flames that wreathed it crackled in eerie green light. "I am the king that was..." His voice was calm, almost bored. "And you are the king that should never have been." Suddenly, my vision blurred. Memories that weren't mine flashed before my eyes. Ancient battles, blood-stained pyramids, a throne that I had once claimed as my own. But the memories weren't of me. They were of him. Or were they? Chapter 8. The Whispering Abyss. Enough talk. His voice boomed like a crack of thunder. He raised a scepter and slammed it into the ground. The temple floor split open beneath me. I plummeted into the abyss, falling, endlessly falling. The world blurred into a vortex of gold and black, screams echoing around me. Some my own, some ancient voices I had never heard before. Then silence. I landed hard on cold stone. My body ached, but I was alive. I forced myself to stand, my surroundings coming into focus. I was in another chamber, deeper beneath the temple. In front of me stood an altar, covered in dust and age. Upon it lay a book, bound in blackened leather, its cover engraved with the same symbols that had burned into my skin. The title was written in a language older than time itself, but I could still read it. The Scepter of Anubis, the Path to Hell. My fingers trembled as I reached the book, and then, a voice, "You are not ready." I spun around. A figure stood at the edge of the darkness. Tall, cloaked, its face hidden beneath a hood. But I knew who it was. I had seen this figure in my dreams. Anubis, the god of death, had come to claim me. To be continued. Will he accept his fate? What lies within the book? And is Anubis truly an enemy or something far worse? Follow and stay tuned for the next chapter. Chapter 9. The God of the Lost. I couldn't move. The figure stepped forward, its jackal head shrouded in shadow. Anubis, the god of the dead, the guide of souls, the eternal watcher of the underworld. Yet he didn't strike. He simply stood there, his hollow eyes fixed on me. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of burning incense, and something older, something rotten. The book in my hands pulsed like a beating heart. Then he spoke. "You have walked too far down this path." His voice was neither kind nor cruel. It was like stone grinding against stone. "And now you must decide." "Decide what?" I swallowed, gripping the book tighter. Anubis tilted his head. "Whether to fulfill your fate or to defy it." The word sent a chill through my bones. What fate? What was he talking about? I wanted answers, but before I could speak, the room shook. The walls cracked and a deep, guttural laugh filled the chamber. It came from everywhere and nowhere at once, vibrating in my skull. Foolish God, a voice boomed. You still believe he has a choice? I turned, but there was no one there. Then, a second pair of eyes opened within the darkness. 2, 4, 8. A dozen burning eyes ignited in the shadows, staring straight into my soul. The laughter grew louder. Something ancient had awakened. Something darker than even death itself. Chapter 10. The Chains of the Abyss. Anubis lifted his scepter, and the room trembled at his command. The walls began to shift, hieroglyphs glowing with a fiery red light. Do not listen to it, he warned, his voice more urgent now. It knows your past. It will twist it. But the thing in the darkness only laughed. He already knows the truth, it hissed. He has seen it in his dreams. He has felt it in his blood. The eyes multiplied, dozens upon dozens, blinking in and out of existence. And then, a hand emerged. It was massive, clawed and wrapped in chains. An arm covered in blackened, ancient metal reached toward me. And suddenly I remembered the war, the betrayal, the fall of the pharaoh who defied the gods. Me, I was the pharaoh. I was the one who had broken the laws of the underworld. And now it had come to reclaim me. No. Anubis slammed his scepter into the ground, and the chamber exploded in light. Golden energy erupted around us, forming a protective barrier. The creature shrieked, its form writhing. The chains on its arm rattled violently. But it didn't retreat. It was waiting for me to make a choice. Anubis turned to me, his eyes like burning coals. If you take the book, you seal your fate. I looked down at the book in my hands. The cover shimmered with an unearthly glow. The title burned into my vision. Fire, the Scepter of Anubis. The path to hell. Fire. I had to choose. If I took it, I would awaken something that could never be stopped. If I left it, I might never learn the truth. The chains rattled. The shadows moved. The voice in the abyss whispered my name. And I reached out. To be continued. What happens when he takes the book? What is the entity bound in the abyss? And will Anubis stand by his side or betray him? Follow and stay tuned for the next chapter.